Hey, everybody, welcome to Pep Talk, the podcast. We give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help us, God. We take these complex and interesting health, wellness, and medical conversations that you hear about all the time, that are all over social media and all around the dinner table, and we take them and break them down into simple, digestible, easy to understand segments. And then we give you some action steps so that you can improve your life, your health, the health of your loved ones, and the health of your community. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Naputi. I'm a 20-plus year practicing physician in the field of functional medicine, functional neurology, and helping people get to the root cause of their problems. Today, I'm going to take you down a very interesting journey talking about genetics. And I remember when we first started talking about genes back in the 1980s, and our weekly reader told us that the genes that mom and dad have are the genetics that we have. And that's really about all we knew about it up until about 20 years ago. And now in the last 3 to 5 years, the study of genes and genetics has exploded. And now we, through precision testing and looking at a specific type of our genetic code, we as human beings can now have a roadmap, if you will, a blueprint, if you will, of how to live our lives. And every human being is uniquely different. Even if you're an identical twin, your genetics are going to be different. And there's different types of genes and different aspects of genes. Today, we're going to focus on understanding something in genetics called single-nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs is what they're commonly referred to as, and the genetic adaptations and really how stress affects that and how our body responds genetically to stresses, physically, chemically, and emotionally. So let me talk a little bit about some of the notes I wrote today for us. Look, genetics, it's a study of really hereditary, right? And the variations in living organisms, and focusing on how those traits are passed from one generation to the next. Really, at its core, genetics it's really governed by your DNA. And the vast instructions of your blueprints contains all information really about your life and how your life and body is wired to be optimally well or to not be well. And DNA is composed of something called nucleotides. Nucleotides are the fundamental basic protein building blocks of DNA. It's adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine that form together this little code that makes your genetic code. And it's so diverse and different amongst everybody. So what are single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs? I'm going to use a lot of analogies today so that you can hopefully understand better about this. Because once you understand what genes are and what SNPs are, doing a single nucleotide or a SNP test to find out the action steps that you should take to improve the quality and function of your health is truly a no-brainer. So if you think of DNA as kind of a cookbook, if you will, filled with recipes that make up a blueprint of your body. Each recipe represents a gene. And a single nucleotide polymorphism, or a SNP, is like a single letter, or if you will, a typo or a variant in one of these recipes, one of the ingredients. So for example, if I'm making something that calls for salt, S-A-L-T, and I have a typo in there or spelling error in there, and I put silt, S-I-L-T, instead of S-A-L-T, well, that becomes a completely different word in itself. And the SNPs are the most common types of genetic variations, occurring approximately 1 in every 1,000 base pairs, which we have around 3 billion base pairs in the human genome. So it can be about 4 to 5 million SNPs that are out of balance with an individual. And by the way, these small changes can alter the function of our entire gene. Some of them can result in enhanced or reduced production of proteins, which can lead to diseases like Alzheimer's and cancers and heart diseases and things of that nature. Some of these genes can be altered. The SNPs can be associated with certain conditions like diabetes and heart disease and neurological conditions. They can affect how our body handles and metabolizes drugs. Look, if you're a physician and you prescribe any type of narcotic for your patient, you really should run a SNP test on your patients to find out what their pharmacogenetics are. Because there are certain drugs you could give people that could really hurt them or even kill them if you don't know the genetic predisposition. And there are certain drugs that if a person doesn't metabolize them properly, aren't going to be effective. So not only can we use this to determine lifestyle and risk for diseases, but this type of information can be used to make precision medications for folks. And that's what we really should be doing. The science is there. The technology is there. We just need to put the systems in place for that. So SNPs don't always cause health problems, by the way. Many of them are totally benign, and most people don't even know that they're a problem because they're not. However, others are directly implicated in disease pathways. And that's what we look for with our testing. Look, as a functional medicine practitioner, every one of my patients gets a single nucleotide polymorphism test. They get the SNP test. I use the BioLimitless Discovering DNA test because not only is it 99% accurate, it's 99.7% accurate, by the way. It's not just the testing, it's the application. It's what do you do with that information once you get it? And by the way, as more data comes in, we have our app that's AI driven that's going to tighten up the recommendations that are going to be given for those individual patients to use. So let's talk about gene adaptation to stress. So stress is physical, chemical, and neuroemotional. There are 3 types of stresses that every doctor should measure you. When you go to the doctor to get a health checkup, they should measure your stress levels, physically, chemically, and neuroemotionally, and then they should measure your body's ability to accommodate to that stress. That's what health is. Health is not just how much stress you're under, it's how your body accommodates to that stress. And because we live in such an old school, archaic system of healthcare that really isn't about focusing on health and it's not giving you the care that you need, most people don't even have access to this. So stress, by the way, challenges the body to maintain a balance, an equilibrium, or a homeostasis, if you will. And genetic adaptations to stress is kind of like adjusting the dial controls on a panel. It's like fine-tuning stuff, right? I do a lot of microscope work in my practice, so I'm looking under the microscope, and I can use the big dials to get a kind of a big blurry picture. But if I want to get real precise and real clear, I got to precisely dial it in. Well, your genetic adaptation is just like that dialing in. Here's an example. Okay, let me give you an example of this. So here's a high altitude adaptation. So at high altitudes, like my daughter was just in Colorado Springs, way different altitude than here in St. Louis, Missouri. Oxygen levels are lower at high altitudes, posing a challenge for survival. You've heard of altitude sickness, and you've heard people that train for altitude issues. Certain SNPs, such as those, like here's a SNP, EPA-S1. The EPA-S1 gene enhances oxygen utilization in populations living in mountainous regions. That SNP is very important. Like the Himalayas, the Andes, those all those mountainous regions, these genetic tweaks allow individuals to avoid hypoxia. And hypoxia-related issues. So our genes adapt to our surroundings, and it's good to know if you have these genes or don't have these genes. By the way, let's talk about SNPs and disease, kind of like piecing the puzzle together, if you will. So let's talk about it from a puzzle standpoint. SNPs are like pieces of a health puzzle, and each SNP represents a variation that might contribute to a disease or a risk of disease or resilience to some types of diseases, okay? Like here are a couple examples. There's a gene called BDNF. BDNF genes, these variants in these genes are linked to brain-derived neurotropic factor production. Neurotropic production of the brain is brain regeneration, brain firing, that brain lighting up like a Christmas tree working. But if there's changes in that, then the BDNF receptors go down and we have more risk for depression, anxiety, and memory issues. So that's one example. Here's another example of SNPs, the MTHFR, which you hear me talk about all the time. That SNP is very common. In fact, about 70 to 75% of the population has some level of this SNP issue. And these SNPs influence folate metabolism and methylation in the body. And impaired function of this increases risk of cardiovascular function, migraine problems, other cardiovascular diseases, autoimmune issues, neural tube defects with development of a child during pregnancy. It can also lead to issues of skin problems. This gene is one of the genes that, if it's problematic and not dealt with properly through lifestyle change and supplementation, can lead to miscarriages. So knowing these SNPs is really powerful because it gives you kind of a roadmap of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Here's another one. There are the APEO genes. These alleles, these SNPs increase susceptibility for Alzheimer's, because it can cause an increase in production of the tau protein that can fold over and cause Alzheimer's issues and other types of, brain problems. So understanding these variants allows for targeted interventions. And really, in a world where the pharmaceutical industry controls the word prevention, this truly is a prevention mitigation opportunity for people through lifestyle. Let me give you a couple more analogies. I like the garden analogy. So gene expression, which, we all have these genes and genetics, and they express based off of our physical, chemical, and emotional stresses. They base their expression off of the SNPs. They base their expression off of the health of our gut bacteria. So the quality of the health of your bacteria of your gut determines the expression of your genes as well. So gene expression determines which genes are turned on or turned off, much like kind of deciding which plant in a garden to water, right? Think about this. Your environment, your diet, your stress, your sleep, your toxins, they act as a gardener, okay? Influencing the growth of these genetic plants, if you will. So a positive input, positive environmental inputs are a balanced diet, stress management, adequate sleep, regular exercise, etc. Negative environmental inputs are things like chronic stress, poor diet, toxic exposure, which the average person is exposed to over 700,000 chemical toxins per day, a sedentary lifestyle. The more advanced our civilization seems to get with technology, the more sedentary we get, so the sicker we get, right? For example, stress can activate genes that promote inflammation. They can increase the risk for chronic health conditions, which, 60% of our population has at least one chronic illness, 40% has at least two, and those numbers are on the rise. So on the other hand, nutrient-dense diets can switch on genes that are associated with repair and vitality and switch off genes that are really primarily dealing with inflammation. So the symphony of genetics really and the environment as they work together. Imagine your body like a symphony, like an orchestra. Genes are the musicians and the environment is the conductor. So when they work in harmony, the result is this beautiful melody of health. When they don't work in harmony, the result is obviously symptoms, sicknesses, and then ultimately disease and premature death. It's really, truly amazing how understanding how your genetic predisposition of expressing your lifestyle determines the expression of your genes. What do I mean? If you found out at a young age that you shouldn't eat certain foods, you should get a certain amount of exercise, you should get a certain amount of rest, you should take a certain amount of supplements, that can help your body turn on certain genes and turn off certain genes along the course of your lifetime. Well, the same thing's true if you do the opposite, if you eat the foods you shouldn't. Let's say you have MTHFR. Well, you're supposed to be gluten-free with MTHFR. Let's say your diet is standard American gluten diet. You're supposed to have folate in your system, but it can't be folic acid. It needs to be L-methylfolate. And you need methylated B12 and methylated B9, but you don't. Now you're susceptible to turning on genes for disease and off genes for healing. So the personalized strategy for genetic harmony really is the key. So the first thing you should do is identify the SNPs to understand your potential risk. Like that's the big thing. Understand your SNPs. So SNPs are so important. And measuring over 800,000 of them is the key. There are other tests out there on the market. There's some that measure, 10, 20, 30 SNPs. Yes, it gives you some info, but the 800,000 SNP test that BioLimitless offers, we're not going to see any more genes come out of that. We have like an infinite amount of resources in that test alone to tell us how to live our life. And then epigenetics is modifying gene expression through lifestyle changes. So the SNPs tells you how to live your life. Living your life that way helps modify the genes that turn on and turn off. Number 3 is nutrition. Tailored nutrition towards your genetic lifestyle. Eating the foods that are best for your genetic makeup. Stress reduction. Practicing techniques like mindfulness, vagal nerve stimulation, relaxation techniques. And based off of your genetic predisposition for how you respond to stress determines frequency, consistency, and even the type of exercises you should do. And then obviously targeted supplements, using nutraceuticals and targeted supplements like peptides and gut microbiome to support specific genetic pathways is really, really powerful. Supporting MTHFR with a gluten-free diet and methylated B12 and methylated B9, game changer for people. If you had an APOE gene, you can mitigate your risk for Alzheimer's by making sure that you have the right amount of omega-3 fish oils in your diet and avoiding seed oils and exercising properly. I mean, it's all about testing, not guessing. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is go back and listen to this talk again, because I give quite a few analogies that might help you better understand SNPs, why they're important. I know it's a new thing. They've been around forever. We've been looking at these for the past 50 years, but really the last 3 years, we've really been able to learn how to access these and how changing our lifestyles by, eating well, sleeping well, breathing well, moving well, we will be well. These genetic tests give you the map, the keys in the car. You still got to drive it. And I'm telling you, understand your genetic expression coupled with balancing your microbiome, coupled with making sure your cell function is optimal performance, and then making sure your central nervous system and then your autonomic nervous system are balanced. Those are the 5 pillars of really functional health and wellness. And then getting with practitioners that understand that health is a balance of your body physically, of your body chemically, and of your body neuroemotionally. Those are the pillars to what health really is. And the test, not guess philosophy is the way to find out how you should live your lifestyle and what action steps you should take and what things you should avoid. So listen, go back and rewatch this, share this with your friends and family and loved ones. Go to our website, that's peptalk.world, peptalk.world. You guys can really tap into the really infinite amount of data that we have there. Hundreds of podcasts, hundreds of papers. I mean, we're there to help give you the knowledge that you need to make the right decisions. We're going to give you the map, the keys in the car, but you still got to drive this thing. Knowledge is power, but wisdom is taking that knowledge and applying it to your life. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share with your friends and family and loved ones, and know that the best is truly yet to come. So folks, until we meet again, I'm Dr. Eric Naputi. God bless you, God bless America, and God bless the world. Stay smart out there, and I'll see you soon. Be well.